Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this Squared Up Coffee Break. This week we are live from Ignite 2017. My name is Matthew Long, and I'm joined today by Richard Benwell.
Hi, Matthew.
And I'm joined by Richard South as well.
Good morning, Matthew. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you, Rich. As you can hear, we're also joined by a lot of attendees at Ignite because we are standing on the show floor, on the expo floor. So hopefully you can hear us okay. Excellent.
Great. Seems to be working. So that's a pretty good start. It's been fairly hairy trying to get this session up and running on the show Wi-Fi. And sorry we're running a couple of minutes late. It was a pretty late night for a few of us from Squared Up last night. So we've been hacking out the slides with all the latest news from Ignite right up until the last minute. So we've been pretty busy trying to bring you this session. So hopefully we've got some interesting things to tell you, and I guess I'm going to sort of talk you through that with a bit of input from the others.
Cool. So let's move on the slides and talk about what we're going to do.
All right. So I guess the sort of story yesterday was going to the opening keynote, which is always pretty exciting. That was delivered by Satya Nadella, who's a terrific sort of speaker and presenter, and as you can imagine, it was all a very sort of slick affair. And it was very much the big vision from Microsoft, and when we say big vision, very, very sort of high level. So something they talked quite a lot about is the intelligent cloud and the intelligent edge. And my reading of this really is it's a kind of replacement as a key slogan. When Satya started, there was a lot of talk about cloud first, mobile first, which always seemed to be a sort of slightly laughable statement, the idea that you would have two things that were both first. And it seems like perhaps Microsoft have realised that pitching themselves as mobile first, and nobody's quite going to buy that. So it's now about the intelligent cloud, obviously sort of Azure, and then the intelligent edge. But we are still not too sure exactly what that means here at Squared Up. So either we're a bit dimmer than we hope, or Microsoft haven't quite kind of communicated this sort of message as clearly as they might have liked. So that was the sort of first part of the message. We got to see a sort of snazzy demo of the HoloLens as used by Ford in sort of prototyping their cars. And then Satya sort of talked a lot about, I guess, kind of three pillars of the new Microsoft. Obviously, mixed reality or augmented reality, as seen in the world of HoloLens, AI and machine learning, and then the big reveal of the show was that Microsoft are working hard on quantum computing. They brought on a panel of serious, hardcore mathematicians and physicists. Very disappointingly from Squared Up, one of our systems team is actually a pretty hardcore physics grad, did a master's in physics, and he seemed to be the only person from Squared Up who wasn't at the keynote but would have understood what was being sort of said. So that was the big reveal, that Microsoft are working on a quantum computer. The even bigger reveal was that they showed what the quantum computer was, but behind the scenes there appeared to be a bit of a balls up as they kind of pulled back the curtain for here is our quantum computer, and there was no quantum computer there. So they managed to kind of smooth that over with a sort of esoteric joke about Schrodinger's cat. But yeah, we don't know if someone behind the scenes is getting fired for that. They did then put the curtain back, and then 5 minutes later pull the curtain back again to show off the sort of quantum computer. And the other sort of reveal around that, which I guess is sort of still in prototypical stage, I'm imagining, was that they're releasing a sort of development language to develop against the new kind of quantum computing powers. So pretty kind of exciting stuff, and certainly big vision, and very much sort of being pitched that Microsoft is going to solve like all the problems of the world, and that's not exaggeration on my part. It was like, now we're going to solve global warming, now we're going to solve global hunger, now we're going to solve
drugs and medicine,
now we're going to solve all health issues. So I mean, it's pretty grand stuff. Obviously exciting, but jolly grand. When you come out then on the sort of show floor where we are talking to customers, talking to sort of prospects here, it's a bit of a different picture, and life in the trenches is much more like this. And this was pretty much the first thing that I spoke to someone about, was that we've got an issue where a service that runs our print spooler keeps hanging, and it stops processing jobs. Like, what can I do about this? And
is quantum computing going to help?
Yeah, is quantum computing going to help me? Or gosh, you're gonna solve all health, food, and global warming issues, but it's still impossible for me to kind of patch a server without sort of things going down. So there is this sort of very sort of odd disconnect between the sort of future of Microsoft and the kind of present of Microsoft. That was kind of written up, I thought, really nicely in the Register, for those of you who know that, where they just sort of express this sort of, I think, sort of really clearly. It's like, well, Microsoft are researching quantum computing, that's kind of to be expected. Why are they hyping this at Microsoft Ignite, which is a sort of show for IT pros? And as the Register says, it talks a lot about how Microsoft want to be perceived, which is really as like a super cool kind of company at the sort of cutting edge of innovation. But as it says here, another good expression, I think, from the writer of this article is that the value of Ignite is that it's focused on more humdrum matters, and it is these questions of kind of patching servers and desktops and managing legacy applications and so on. And well, I think we would sort of put ourselves firmly in the crowd of trying to be here to help you guys with problems that you have today, not with things that you dream that you might be doing in sort of 10 years' time. And that's always, we often sort of feel ourselves a sort of disconnect between the exciting world of sort of future promises that sometimes are delivered and sometimes get sort of swept under the rug, and really trying to actually sort of deliver product to you today that can help you with the problems that you sort of face today.
I mean, it's funny to sweep under the rug, because they did have another announcement in the keynote early on, which is they've got a new VR headset, like the Oasis, I think that's what they called it. They're like, oh, we've got this Oasis headset, it's coming out this fall, and then that was it, gone. And granted, it's not really like helping enterprise IT, but at least that's something more material. That's something they could have talked about and said, here's the thing that's coming in 6 months or in 5 months, and it does this thing. And this is actually new for them, because so far they've always been mixed reality, and this is just straight up VR. So then they got an entrance into the VR space, and they didn't really talk about it at all.
Yeah, that's true. And the other demo that they sort of demoed a lot, and they had a sort of very inspiring, energetic speaker for, was around Microsoft's sort of Graph, which, as I understand it, really is a sort of API capability reaching into all of their Office 365 services, so that you can build applications on top of that and on top of your sort of entire sort of data sets, and then tie them all together with things like Cortana. That was pretty interesting sort of demo. Again, hard to sort of tell how much of that is sort of going to be real for you guys, and how much of that is a sort of exciting kind of demo.
But some of this disconnect at a high level from Satya seems to be flowing down, as you'd expect, down to product strategy. I think, Rich, you had a slide about maybe some areas where you'd expect to see Microsoft addressing the real problems, which is how do you migrate from on-prem to cloud, how do you better manage your on-prem infrastructure, and actually surprisingly quiet in that space.
Yeah, so in terms of, so that's a sort of few sort of, not necessarily sort of negative things, but things that I guess we feel probably don't kind of correlate with you guys, our audience. Things that we thought that you might like, that caught our eye, that we've sort of seen here, and that got a big round of applause in the show, was firstly the announcement of something called Azure Cloud Shell, which is essentially the ability to sort of fire up PowerShell straight from the browser. Rich, you were impressed by this, so you talk us through it.
I think it followed a marketing video from the Azure team where there was a bit of tumbleweed after the video sort of finished. People weren't very impressed, and then someone came on and demoed this, and you just saw a smile flicker across the face of pretty much every attendee there, just seeing PowerShell within a browser. You want to use PowerShell against your Azure subscription rather than firing up PowerShell locally on your client, setting up your subscription, remembering what your IDs were and stuff. You just hit the button within your browser itself and start operating against your Azure subscription using the Azure PowerShell SDK. So it's just really neat, and it's just, as soon as you see it, you think, that's genius.
Yep.
Like, why haven't we had that before? So that's really neat, and got a big round of applause, and the best round of applause for the technical keynote.
So the other thing that we thought you guys might like that's getting quite a bit of buzz, and again just seems a real world thing that you can actually get up and use and will make your life a bit better, is something called Project Honolulu, which I think is in preview at the moment but accessible in preview in TP, which is the new Windows Server management experience. And I wouldn't claim to know a lot about this, but my take on it would be that it's trying to bring a kind of Azure-like UI experience, user interface experience onto your kind of local Windows server. As Microsoft sort of tries to push everything into that sort of Azure funnel, trying to make even your sort of local server management experience fit in with that. So browser based, and as you can see from that sort of UI styling, very much within Microsoft's modern paradigm.
Yeah, I think if they're going to actually get people to embrace like Server Core and Nano properly as well, which is what they've been hyping for a while to try and drive density internally, this sort of management tool is really key for that, because if you're just having to get an RDP session with a console window, or you're completely headless with Nano, you have no access at all, this is the stack they want you to use to manage that Windows. And now that the Windows default install option is even those two SKUs, Microsoft just don't want you using a UI, and this is their sort of vision for that.
We've got kind of commenting on chat. One of you guys has been playing with this and says it's really, really cool, very useful for service providers in particular, and dealing with sort of centralized management of servers. So that seems to be a sort of popular new feature. So go check that out. And as I say, something real world you can get your hands on and put to use.
Yeah, and it's hot off the press, but we're obviously keen to give it a whirl ourselves and see whether there's any alignment, sort of synergy with Squared Up, either hyperlinking from Squared Up down into one of these portals for a server or for a group of servers, or embedding. If there's a tear-off view from that could be an interesting way of embedding particular data live from a server into Squared Up. So we'll certainly get our hands on it and see what there is to do there.
Does it have donuts though? That's the question.
It looks like it has got donuts. And likewise, if you guys are hands-on with it and you're finding it useful and you see a fit for it within a Squared Up world, let us know, and as ever you can contact us either via support or hello@squaredup.com, and all of that stuff gets seen by us.
There was one other thing I wanted to talk about, which was the preview they showed of Azure patching management.
Okay.
So they've now got a solution in Azure where you can go see your updates pending with Windows and Linux servers, and you can patch those both on-prem and in the cloud. So no more having to manage sort of that yourself, standing up a SUS server, downloading, syncing, everything else. You can go to one portal and across your on-prem and cloud resources, see across both OSs you have what updates are outstanding, when they need to be installed, and you can bulk schedule the installation from the portal as well directly and say, I want it to go install 3 a.m. on these servers, again, across your entire hybrid infrastructure. So that's pretty cool. People have been asking Microsoft for a long time, can I have a patching solution in the cloud, please? I don't want to manage this internally, and they've finally got one, so that's a pretty interesting thing. Definitely check that out if you haven't seen it so far.
And then don't mention the here's what we're not hearing about, and a phrase we've heard quite a lot of times already this week is sometimes you learn a lot more about what Microsoft is planning on doing from what they don't say than what they do say. So here's what we are not hearing about this week at all, and I don't mean we sort of Squared Up, anyone here as attendees or anyone looking at the schedule. Microsoft Operations Management Suite, OMS. There is almost no mention of this brand anywhere here at Ignite. I couldn't see personally any sessions that had OMS in the title. I'm not guaranteeing that 100%, but I certainly had a look and I couldn't kind of see any. So if there are some, there certainly are many. You'll have also seen really in the build-up to Ignite, if you sort of follow these things on Twitter, more and more OMS functionality appearing within the main Azure portal under Azure Management, which would lead us to speculate, although we certainly don't have any additional information on this, but we think it'll be bye-bye to the OMS portal. It looks like there's obviously a new query language, which is one of the main features of OMS, so that's just been introduced. A bunch of functionality, including, for example, View Designer, is going into the sort of Azure portal, and we can't see the sort of OMS portal sort of lasting for very long as a separate portal in that landscape, and that seems to fit with what would appear to be the general strategy of Microsoft in this area, which is that the Azure portal will essentially be your single pane of glass for managing literally every kind of conceivable piece of IT service that you might have. That seems to be, as we read it, the sort of vision from Microsoft. That's obviously a lot of promise in that, but also I guess the sort of question of can Microsoft sort of stay in control of that with literally sort of hundreds and hundreds of products of theirs delivered by hundreds and hundreds of different teams, all fit into a sort of single unified kind of consumption UI experience. So that's quite a sort of interesting development. Obviously sort of interesting. We enjoy sort of thinking that about that at Squared Up as sort of UI developers ourselves, but OMS we think you will start to hear a lot less of. Less kind of close to my heart, but something someone pointed out to me on a stand yesterday, and I was like, oh yeah, you're right, and that's kind of quite striking when we think we're at a Microsoft conference for IT Pro, is that the word Windows is almost not mentioned at all by Microsoft. So I don't think there's many sort of sessions that sort of talk about just Windows. Certainly whenever Windows is seen, it's either sort of prefixed or suffixed with something to do with Azure. So we think you know that the sort of word is start getting used to a world in which sort of Windows is a lot less sort of central to the Microsoft paradigm.
I mean, they even spend most of their time now saying, oh, but we love Linux, it works on Linux as well, so they're almost giving more love, as it were, more messaging to Unix Linux operating systems than they are their own.
We're not that close to the news on this, so if it's an area of interest I would just hop on to Google, but it also looks like it's bye-bye to sort of Skype for Business as far as we can tell, and that seems to be going over into Teams, Microsoft Teams, which is part of Office 365 I believe, and there the sort of play seems to be that they are kind of going after Slack. That seems to be Slack is the big deal in the world of DevOps and cloud. I mean, certainly our developers can't get them off it. I'm not too sure what it is other than the platform for sending cat gifs around highly effectively, but it seems to be sort of very important. Microsoft obviously recognised the need for a cat gift platform for enterprise, and so Skype functionality seems to be being rolled into this product called Teams, which is in 365.
Do you know, they even have a session actually on that they're calling it ChatOps, which I think is the most horrible name for anything, but yeah, apparently they're focusing on cat gifs. Okay,
so something to take a look at if you're involved with sort of Skype for your organisation. Basically, the theme of the show, if old sort of Steve Ballmer was here, he wouldn't be sort of screaming developers, developers, developers. He'd be screaming Azure, 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 and then that is essentially the message across the board. Is this is just kind of all you hear is sort of Azure, and the only kind of slight twist on that is Azure Stack, which is the Azure-like experience in a box. Sort of delivered to you on-prem from sort of certified hardware providers. Just from kind of people we've talked to on the stand, there does seem to be sort of plenty of kind of customer interest in this. Plenty of also people saying like, yeah, I'd like it, not sure whether we're going to be able to afford it, but definitely a sort of lot of interest there. If you or sort of your organisation are interested in that, we just wanted to throw a little shout out to a company called Grid Pro from Sweden, who we ran into here. They're doing some interesting work on top of Azure Stack. They're some bright guys, and they've actually been sort of developing on top of that platform in preview for the last sort of couple of years. So if that's a direction your company is sort of thinking of going in, why not look up Grid Pro software as well? And they're useful guys to talk to on that front.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right, so in terms of a sort of squared up world, we got our nice big orange stand. It has been sort of Lego madness as usual. So we had a super busy day yesterday. You can probably hear in my voice I'm sort of pretty hoarse already. Loads and loads of people keen to get their hands on Lego. We've sent some of them away a bit disappointed when they found out they have to have SCOM to get their hands on their Lego. really enjoyable for us. We met a lot of great customers for the first time. So if any of those are on the call, thank you very much or on the session. Thank you very much for sort of stopping by. Big shout out to Eric, who was a real pleasure to meet you, and had a very heartwarming moment on the stand where he was reunited with an old colleague, and we just saw a ton of customers yesterday, and well, you guys said a lot of nice things to us, so sort of thank you very much for that. We got a busy schedule throughout the week, so we've got case studies running, we've been doing customer networking events and so on. On the case study front, there's the awesome Sean Williams from Purdue University. Just a reminder, he's got an absolutely brilliant case study. It's not just your sort of standard PDF case study, it's a live tour of his environment of 1,500 servers. You won't believe the speed of his environment, so if you are suffering from SCOM performance issues and thinking it is inherently slow, and thinking the only time you see a fast SCOM environment is when you see Squared Up demoing in our lab with 20 servers. This is sort of evidence, and we've sort of spoken to a number of other customers here, SCOM can absolutely fly when it's sort of treated sort of correctly. So say if you have any doubt on that, you don't need to sort of particularly take my word from it. There's a video on our YouTube channel of Sean doing a live case study live in their environment of sort of 1,500 servers. So sort of do check that out, and we will sort of kind of continue to try and get best practice out there to you on sort of SCOM performance tuning, and we are also cooking up a few ideas which we may be able to sort of share with you later in the year on that front.
Also like the towering pile of Lego in that picture as well.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I meant to mention is we've got a massive, a great big pile of Lego. We're here at Ignite, which hopefully you can sort of see in that sort of screenshot by Sean with a message of map every app, which dovetails with the kind of vNext previews that we've been delivering of Squared Up. Talk a tiny bit about that in a second. The reason why it says $10 million on there is just a little bugbear of mine from a conversation I had yesterday with an extremely nice person who was head of what they call, not a description I've heard before, but ITOM. That was sort of how it's pronounced, so IT Operations Management, head of that for a very large corporate enterprise. Lovely lady, and she sort of shared with me that their current project, which involved application mapping, was something that they were spending $10 million on with a very large vendor, and I was like, oh, please just sit through our demo. You've got Microsoft SCOM. It costs $10,000 to map all of your applications with Squared Up. So hoping to at least sort of continue that interesting sort of conversation this week. The Map Every sort of app message. Well, before I get to that, for those of you who are here at Ignite, just a reminder that we are running here at Ignite those vNext sneak previews throughout the week at lunchtime at 1. We will start to sort of share some of this stuff with you guys. Existing customers kind of not at Ignite, over the sort of next couple of months you can expect to sort of get a little drip feed of what's coming. That Purdue University case study is on at 1:30 to 2 every day, and then because there is also a sort of real absence of SCOM content here, we're putting on a number of community sessions. So after this webinar we're going to be doing a kind of expert panel on SCOM and ITSM, which I hope people are busy preparing for in the background, because it's not a subject I know a lot about. At the end of the day today, we're doing a best of SCOM community management packs. We know that you guys have really kind of gobbled up that content so far when we've sort of put it out there. We actually happen to have a lot of the authors of those SCOM management packs here with us, so we thought that was a great opportunity to share some of that content with attendees here. Tomorrow we'll be talking about SCOM and OMS and the changes that we're sort of seeing there and how that landscape now looks. And then Wednesday we'll be rounding out the day with some more customer networking and Ask the Experts, where again we've got a lot of sort of expert customers, community leaders and other vendors to answer questions. And then our big Lego prize giving, when we get sort of deluged and have to sort of fight people off a little bit, is Thursday at 11 a.m. So make sure our energy's nice and high for for that. And then I sort of talked about this sort of vNext sneak preview we're running. We're not able to sort of share that with you here in this sort of very widely broadcast environment. We'll just sort of talk a little bit about where we're going with vNext. And to clarify, when I use this phrase vNext, I use that because I'm not talking about version 3.4, which will be literally the next release. We're talking here about a release that will happen in Q1 next year. It doesn't yet have a sort of version number, so I'm choosing to refer to it as vNext. And also I think that sort of name befits the fact that we're going to see a very, very sort of significant new set of sort of capabilities in the product. So the message around that is going to be about map every app, because it features very, very heavy enhancements to Vader, but not really just about application mapping, which we can kind of capture nicely in that neat little sort of sound bite, but it's now so that you can monitor every application. So we know that most of you guys kind of have Vader capabilities at the moment and you're using them to sort of one degree or another, but we still feel that there's a sort of disconnect between, okay, kind of mapping those applications and then delivering application monitoring on top of that, and that broader picture of how the application kind of informs life within your IT organisation sort of generally. So that's where we're sort of looking to sort of go with the product from a high level, and it's because we sort of see this at the moment sort of huge trend within IT and obviously within IT operations management, and focus on service management, and you know, and we know that there's a huge amount of you, for example, running in particular ServiceNow projects, but not just ServiceNow, Cherwell, BMC.
Service manager, maybe?
Service preferred service manager, perhaps for those of you who have got good deals on your Microsoft licenses. So there's a huge focus there on sort of service management. But what else is in the picture for you guys in terms of the IT organisation and landscape? Well, application development, of course, and here we've deliberately not used the term DevOps because, again, Microsoft may be talking and acting as though everyone is living and breathing the DevOps dream, but that is, again, not the reality we see, apart from in sort of very small slices of life within large enterprise organizations. And then the big picture for a lot of you guys is, of course, that my slides aren't working. Oh, there we go. Is the infrastructure, you know, in the world of SCOM, servers, databases, storage, network, and so on. And what we see as tying all these things together is the application model. And so that's where map every app, monitor every app fits into the picture. And then just one sort of additional slide to sort of round out on that. This slide we did yesterday, and we sort of followed it with an actual sort of demo. But this is sort of key to how we see the sort of map every app picture. You've got your large scale infrastructure. You've got a whole bunch of different tools in the IT operations and management space, and you've got a whole set of different audiences across your IT teams. Lots of data, lots of systems, no shortage of data, no shortage of people to kind of consume that data, but how does the kind of consumption of that data sort of look? You know, and what are we really sort of trying to do here? And just to sort of walk you through a sort of very typical kind of scenario we see, and what we think are sort of the key problems we'd like to sort of solve with Squared Up for you is how do you correlate? Suddenly you're getting a flood of tickets onto the sort of service desk. How do you correlate that and find out that was actually the source of that is some sort of very, very low level problem down on sort of SQL? How do you work that out? First off, the service desk probably going to assume that this new problem with the application was caused by the application team, but actually maybe it was just caused by a bad patch up here on Windows. and that's something that's probably gone through a change request process again in another tool in ServiceNow or Service Manager. But it's not going to be ServiceNow or Service Manager that tells you that that bad patch is applied and that's the issue. That's probably going to be data that resides in a different tool. It might be in the new Azure Log Analytics or Splunk. Once you've made that correlation, how do you then get all of that information and that correlation to a totally different set of people, which is the IT admins who are responsible for that Windows sort of server patching, all the whilst trying to ensure that you're surfacing that to the business and to your bosses. And that's the problem that we're working on solving, and we're putting the next generation of capabilities into Squared Up to solve that, because really we think you've got the tooling and you've invested in it, but it's not all sort of joined together, and for far too many organisations the picture is kind of like this: lots of data, lots of audiences, no kind of unity to the IT sort of operations. With Squared Up vNext, we are going to be putting the application model at the heart of what we do. Squared Up sits on top of that tightly defined application model, which flows not only into SCOM, but that can then be used within these other sort of data systems. Data flows into Squared Up as your sort of single pane of glass, and out to your different audiences in terms of the different views and different data that they need to see out to that. Now, slideware is all sort of very well and good. Hopefully, we know this audience is sort of mostly existing customers. You'll know that generally we do demos and not slides, so we have been doing demos that accompany that deck here. So we'll leave you with that. We'll leave you with, I hope, that sounds like a sort of exciting sort of vision, and we'll leave you with the promise that we are working extremely hard to turn that slide into reality for our sort of Q1 release. So with that, I'm just going to quickly review the questions. I'll see if there's anything Matthew or Richard would like to say, but other than that, we better go plan for our next panel. So give me a moment.
Not so far to my knowledge. I think at the moment Xymon is still a tool that we'd love to integrate with, but it's kind of missing.
I think Sean at Purdue may have done.
He did, you're right.
He may have done a Xymon integration. Whoever that is with that question, your name's not actually coming through to us on the chat window. Just pop an email to hello@squaredup.com asking about the Xymon integration. We will pass your details on to Sean at Purdue, and hopefully he'll pick up the thread of that with you. But other than that, I've been Richard South. We've been Squared Up, and goodbye from Microsoft Ignite.
All right, so I will slidelessly do the close and the coffee break. So thanks very much for joining us live from Ignite. Hopefully the audio was good. If it's been a bit crackly and you want to know what we're saying anyway, we'll have a recording up on YouTube shortly, as always, so you can always watch it back there to get a nice, smooth-sounding version. If this is your first coffee break, please check out our blog at squareup.com/blog, where you can see all the material we've been talking about Ignite and also our previous coffee break recordings as well. And there's a playlist on YouTube where you can also see all 25 previous episodes, including the video from our case study with Purdue University, which is definitely worth checking out if you haven't seen that so far. Thank you very much for your time, guys. For those of you Ignite, come and say hi if you haven't already. For the rest of you, thank you very much for joining us. Have a great day.